You were taught that the telephone connected the world. You were never taught what it cost the man who first built one. His name wasn't Bell. He was an immigrant in a cold basement workshop, running a single wire up through the floorboards of his own house. And what he built with it would one day connect billions of people. Every call, every voice, every "I love you" said down a line. But he would die with almost nothing. And history would forget his name for over 100 years. This is the story they left out of the books. And it begins, strangely, with a scream. Decades before Bell, this man was not chasing the telephone at all. He was a working engineer. Clever, restless, always building. To earn a little extra, he treated sick people with mild jolts of electricity, a common remedy of the time. One day, he passed a current to a patient holding a copper wire between his lips. The patient cried out in pain, and the man heard that cry travel down the wire into a piece of copper he was holding to his own ear. He froze. He had just heard a human voice carried through metal. Not a knock, not a click, a voice. In that instant, an idea was born that would outlive him by a century, that the sound of a person could be sent through a wire. He gave it a name in his own language, and he began quietly to build. But here is the part the history books never tell you. He did not build his machine for money. He did not build it for fame or for a patent or to change the world. He built it for one person. His wife had fallen gravely ill, a crippling arthritis that twisted her joints and slowly locked her inside their home, unable to leave her bedroom. He worked long hours downstairs in his basement workshop. She lay upstairs, alone, and he could not bear that she could not reach him. So he ran a wire from his workbench in the basement up through the house to her bedside. Now she could call to him while he worked. Now, across the silence of that house, a husband and his sick wife could hear each other's voices. He had not set out to invent the telephone. He had set out to be there for her. And it worked. For more than a decade, it worked. He knew what he was holding. Over the years, he built dozens of versions, each one better than the last. Friends and neighbors came, spoke into it, and marveled. All he needed now was to protect it and to sell it, and he would be safe forever. But a real patent cost $250, and he did not have it. He was already poor. So he did the only thing he could afford. He filed a cheap temporary placeholder, a caveat, for $20, a note to the world that said, "This idea is mine. I am coming back for it." And then, as if the universe had decided he had come too close, it all began to break. A ferry he was riding exploded. He was badly burned and spent months in a hospital bed. The bills piled up. And while he lay there recovering, his wife did the only thing she could to keep them alive. She gathered his notebooks and his precious models, the machine he had poured his life into, and she sold them for $6. When he was well enough to go and buy them back, they were already gone. The man in that basement has a name: Antonio Meucci, an Italian immigrant living on Staten Island who had built a working voice-over-wire machine years before anyone else you've heard of. His placeholder patent, that cheap little caveat, had to be renewed every year to stay alive. In 1871, he paid it. In 1872, he paid it. In 1873, he scraped it together and paid it again. And then came 1874, and Antonio Meucci could not find the money to renew it. The fee was $10. $10! He didn't have it. So the caveat lapsed. The one piece of paper protecting the idea he'd built to save his wife, gone, because he couldn't afford a single $10 fee. And 2 years later, in 1876, a patent for the telephone was filed by another man. His name was Alexander Graham Bell. Now, let's be fair, because the truth matters more than a good story. Bell was a serious inventor. He filed a real patent, he built a working telephone, and he won. The courts sided with Bell. To this day, most of the world credits Bell, and historians still argue about exactly how much Miyuchi's device could really do. So this is not a tale of a simple theft. But here is what is not in dispute. Miyuchi built a machine that carried the human voice through a wire, and he did it first. A patent examiner later admitted that if Miyuchi had simply kept his caveat alive, no patent could have been granted to Bell at all. $10. That was the distance between Antonio Miyuchi and history. He tried to fight. He took his claim to court against the richest telephone company on earth. But he was old, broke, and spoke almost no English, and the case dragged on for years. Until in 1889, before it could ever be resolved, Antonio Miyuchi died, poor, forgotten, and still holding the truth. And the idea he could not afford to keep? It became one of the largest fortunes in human history. The company built on that patent grew into a giant. For a time, one of the most powerful corporations that has ever existed, worth billions upon billions of dollars, wiring up entire nations, connecting the whole planet, voice by voice. Every telephone pole, every ringing phone, every long-distance call home, a river of money flowing for over a century from the single idea that a human voice could travel down a wire. Antonio Miyuchi had that idea first. He built it first, and he died having earned from the invention that reshaped the world almost nothing at all. It would take 113 years for the world to say his name out loud again. In 2002, the United States Congress finally passed a resolution honoring Antonio Miyuchi's work on the invention of the telephone. He never knew. He had been dead for over a century.
So what does a $10 tragedy teach us about money? On the surface, it's the cruelty of bad luck, the fire, the illness, the $10 he couldn't find. And that is real. But underneath is a lesson that runs through all of history, and it matters for you. Having a brilliant idea and capturing its value are two completely different skills. Miyuchi was a genius at the first and helpless at the second. He could build the future with his bare hands, but he could not afford the patent, could not speak the language of the lawyers, could not survive the long, expensive fight to own what he'd made. And so, the world took his idea and gave the fortune to someone who could. This is the quiet, brutal rule the history books skip. The person who changes the world is very rarely the person who gets rich from it. Ideas are not enough. Protecting them, funding them, fighting for them, that is where fortunes are truly won and lost. Antonio Miyuchi built the first bridge for the human voice, out of love, in a cold basement, for the woman he adored upstairs. The least we can do is remember his name. If this story moved you, subscribe, and we'll keep decoding the fortunes hiding in plain sight. Because the next forgotten genius might be building the future right now, in a basement, for someone they love.